Breaking news this morning, energy regulator Ofgem has slashed the energy price cap to £1,923 if you pay by direct debit, cutting around £150 per year off the average annual household energy bill from October.
Well, the cap remains below the threshold of the energy price guarantee, meaning the government won't be covering a portion of the bills. And with a surge in standing charges, families are still likely to be worse off this winter.
The Chief Executive of Ofgem, Jonathan Brearley, joins us now. Jonathan Brearley, thanks for joining us this morning. So as we just mentioned there, the price cap has come down from £2,074 to £1,923 if you're on direct debit, £1,949 if you're on a prepayment meter. However, the standing charges have gone up. And we knew this was likely to happen, gone up to £300 per year. And already people have been in touch with us on social media saying, it's the standing charge that worries them. For some people, that can be more than their actual bill. So it's not really a situation where people are better off, is it?
Well, let's have a look at what happens for the average household. So the average household last year were paying about £2,500 a year, and government were paying the rest of their bill, which was right up to £4,200 a year at a certain point in time. Now, that family, on average, is better off because even if you take into account the government support, which was around £400, that gives them overall cost of £2,100, and that's down, as you say, to £1,923. So on average, families are better off. However, if you're a lower user, that picture looks a bit different, and if you're a higher user, that looks a bit better. So this is positive news for customers, but what I recognise is that bills are far higher than they were before the gas crisis, where bills were right down at about £1,200, £1,250 a year. So for many families, this is still going to be a big struggle this winter, and that's why Ofgem, the government, and the industry need to work together to look after vulnerable customers.
But you're saying, yeah, OK, the average household will be better off, but actually it's disproportionately hitting the poorer households, isn't it? Those people who are trying to make a decision to cut, or maybe they haven't even got a choice, they have to cut down on their energy bills, and actually because of the standing charge, it's hitting them harder, isn't it? We know from this information from the Resolution Foundation, more than 7 million households are going to face higher bills this winter, and that's because of the increase in standing charges and the loss of government subsidies. So actually, although it's good news for the average household, for those households who are really struggling, the ones that really need it the most, who are having to make tough decisions, this won't help them enough, will it?
Well, look, let's take the standing charge. So what that pays for is the fixed costs for all of the system. It pays for the network that brings energy to our homes, and it pays for the call centres, for example, that companies need to answer all our questions and queries. Now, we have looked in the past at moving those costs away from the standing charge to the price per unit that we all pay. But the problem with that is you create big losers as well as people who would be better off. Now, those losers are equally poor families who have very, very high energy needs. So, for example, very elderly customers that need to heat their home 24 hours a day, families with disabled children who have high electricity needs. Now, we are looking at this for a big part of that standing charge, and we are examining again what the right balance is. But what I need to be clear on is that there are no perfect answers here. If we move it, there will be equally many families who are made worse off. When we looked at it last time, we made people moderately better off, but others worse off.
I mean, if there are some people who definitely have got nothing to worry about when it comes to energy bills, are the bosses of the energy companies. Can you explain something to me? And I'm absolutely baffled. I've tried to read up on this. We've discussed it here on the show this morning. I cannot work out why energy companies like British Gas have reported profits of £969 million after the price cap rise. It has been reported that half that profit, £500 million, was due to changes to the price cap made by the energy regulator. That's you. In comparison, British Gas reported a profit of £98 million in the same period last year. People are watching at home this morning, and we're arguing about £150 here, the saving they might make. It just sort of disappears into comparison when you think about these extortionate profits energy companies are making. Why is that?
Sure. Well, if you look over the last 2 years, particularly if you look last year, when those prices were rocketing, and remember, the wholesale market, the place the companies buy their electricity and gas from, got to 20 times the amount that we normally pay. Now, as the sector as a whole made a significant loss, particularly from last year and from COVID. Now, what we said this year was that they can recover not all of it, just a proportion of those costs. And so, yes, things look different this year, but when I look over the 2 years, for the sector as a whole, actually the average profits are around zero and certainly well below what we think the regulated return should be for shareholders. Now, if we don't do that, if we don't allow companies to recover costs, we know what happens because we saw this in 2021, that costs customers billions when companies go bust. So our job is to make sure we get the balance right. Yes, protect customers from costs today, but also make sure we don't land them with big bills in a very short period of time in the future.
But I understand some of that. OK, they have to protect their businesses, but that seems to be a very high margin they are making here. It's a huge profit. EDF said its British operations, including nuclear and wind power generation, saw earnings jump to 1.95 billion from 740 million in the same period last year. Why does it have to be so much money? I mean, I can understand they need to protect themselves, but that much profit?
Well, look, we regulate the retail companies. Those are the companies that buy and sell energy. It is true there's another part of the whole sector, the ones that generate the electricity, the ones that get the gas out of the ground, that have made large amounts of money as those international prices have rocketed. Now, that's not something that Ofgem controls. That's something ultimately the government has responded to, and they've taxed those profits over time. When we look at the retail market, the piece that we control, as I say, if you look at it over a longer period, you find actually profits are not high at all, and indeed are well below what we think as shareholders should be making. Now, the important thing is for us, if we don't make that happen, we know that costs hit customers, and we know it because we've been through it in 2021. And the last thing I want to do is be standing here next year telling you we have to have another £80 on everyone's bill because of the failures that we've seen. So there's a big balancing act for the regulator, but the rest of the market really is about government and its own policy around tax.
Now, there's a lot of anger from people. I'm just looking at the, people have been getting in touch this morning, sending messages and furious about the amount of money that energy companies are making. Al says they're looting the country. Tomo says, slash £150 off your annual bill. It's a joke, nothing to celebrate. They've allowed the British public to be ripped off. The only thing Ofgem is good at is for allowing profiteering. Your job description, your role for Ofgem, isn't it, is to protect consumers. Do you feel that you are doing enough to do that? Because you've just admitted that you're allowing suppliers to make money from customers, aren't you, in order to try and keep them afloat at some point later on if things happen to go wrong again. But actually, your job is to protect customers, isn't it?
No, absolutely, and that is exactly what we are doing. But what we've got to look at is customers today, but also customers in a year's time. Now, we know what happens when companies aren't financially resilient. We know that those companies, when they go bust, cost customers billions of pounds. It was over £3 billion, the cost of the crisis at the end of 2021. So we've got to make these balanced judgments, and we've got to make sure that we're protecting customers not just today, but also tomorrow. Now, what we've said to those companies, by the way, is before they pay anything to their shareholders, before they give any dividends back to the people who invest, they need to make themselves financially resilient, and they need to be able to weather the sort of storms that we've seen. Now, the really difficult news, and the thing that is driving up all of our bills, is the situation in the gas market driven by the Russia-Ukraine war. That's what's driven up prices, that's what's driven up costs. What I'm saying to companies is if those prices spike again, they need to be ready to protect customers. Now, yes, that does mean allowing them to charge the costs that they incur, but it means making sure they protect customers in the future.
Right.
And the other thing I'm saying to companies is this is going to be a tough winter for customers. They need to make sure their service standards are ready and they are looking after their vulnerable customers.
People are going to want help with their bills, though, straight away, aren't they? There are a lot of people who are thinking, right, we're going to get into autumn, it's going to get colder, I'm going to have to make that decision again as to whether I can afford to put the heating on. Would you like to see more from government on this? Should there be social tariffs? Should we be looking at this whole system of price caps and how this is working for people?
So we are encouraging the government to look at the system of pricing regulation to see if there are better alternatives. And yes, we'd like to see social tariffs in the mix of the things that government might consider. And so we're very happy to support them on that. Now, I go up and down the country talking to people about their energy use, and I know how tough it's going to be for this winter. And so what I'd say to government and to the sector is all of us need to work together. We need to play our part to protect that proportion of customers who are really, really going to struggle. Yes, things are better. They are better than they were last year on average. But as you say, there's a group of customers who are going to struggle. That means companies treating them fairly. That means Ofgem holding the companies to account. And that means all of us working together to make sure those customers are looked after.
Look, judging by the amount of people that got in touch with us, and I don't think we need many more texts and emails to know what the public mood is on this, is that your job at Ofgem is to protect consumers, to look after consumers. One of your directors stepped down a year ago after accusing Ofgem of not doing enough to protect customers from energy costs. Is Ofgem even worth what it's supposed to be now? I mean, are you doing your job? I mean, it seems like you don't have really any major influence over these energy suppliers anymore. There's not a lot you can do. Exactly what is your role and what is your position? Should we start questioning that now?
Well, look, if you look back 5 or 10 years ago at how the market worked, the profits the companies made were much, much higher as a proportion of costs than they are today. So Ofgem is doing its job, not only in regulating pricing, but also in making sure that service standards are improving. So if I go back last year and I look at how long it took customers to get in touch with a company, those times have halved. Now prices are coming down, we are making sure they go down as fast as they go up, and we are making sure we look at the long term and we maintain the financial resilience of the market. So overall, Ofgem is doing its job, but these are complex trade-offs, and ultimately, this entire situation is based on the fact that the Russia-Ukraine war drove up costs far more than they ever have done in our history. So yes, we're doing our job and we'll keep protecting customers, but it's a complex market out there that we're working in.
OK, Jonathan Brearley there, the Chief Executive of the energy regulator Ofgem. Thank you for your time this morning. We will have the Energy Minister, Andrew Berwick, coming on later in the programme as well. So do continue to keep those comments coming in regarding your energy bills this morning.